Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. On Emerald Planet TV, as you know, on a week-to-week basis, we're always looking for those best practices, many of them that have not actually been known much outside of their own communities. We have one that we're going to be demonstrating now that's actually becoming well known in the country of Colombia and within the United States itself as it looks to expand around the globe. This is called the HyOx, or HyOxygenated water, and it's called SuperWater. We're going to find out what SuperWater is all about. This is Dr. Reinerio Linares. He is the lead scientist, founder, CEO as far as HyOx SuperWater, and we're glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Sam.
Thank you for traveling so far to be with us in
Anytime.
Washington, D.C. Glad to have you. Looking at what is the meaning of HyOxygenated water and the SuperWater. Why do you have these two together, and what is the meaning?
So there is a small amount of oxygen dissolved in water. This has been depleted over the years since agriculture, pesticides, and toxic waste has been dumped in the water. So we have increased the amount of oxygen dissolved in the water to a higher level, 100%, 200% of what is normally sustained in the water. So this is important for life.
Now this is something that you hit upon as an idea when you're looking at the core samples coming from the Arctic and Antarctic, and how there was higher levels of oxygen in the water going back, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years. So then you wanted to bring this forward into the 21st century. Is that what you're all about?
It's correct. And if you see the type of vegetation and animals that grew a long time ago, they were lush vegetables, huge trees, very well healthy animals. So I think a lot had to do with the type of water they were drinking at that time.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the new adage now is not only is water is life, but water plus oxygen is life, correct?
It's super life.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about that. But looking at these dead zones, like in the Gulf of Mexico, and there's dead zones in the Pacific, the Atlantic oceans, all over the world, there's these dead zones. Even the Chesapeake Bay, right here in Virginia has dead zones. So looking at that, what is a dead zone, and why is the oxygen in these areas so critically important?
So the Worldwide Consortium of Scientists for the Study of Water, March of 2019, in Scientific America, published a beautiful study, and what they showed that a decline of oxygen by 3% dissolved in the water makes the phytoplankton move to another areas where the oxygen is normal. So lower than 3% is critical and is put a stress on any type of life. Dead zones in the Mediterranean, in the China Sea, and the Indian Ocean, in the Gulf of Mexico. These are areas in which the dissolved oxygen in the water is as low as 50% from normal. So these are unable to sustain life, dead zones.
Now the plankton is so critical and important as far as the sea life, but actually all of life on planet Earth. Tell us, what is plankton and why is it so important that it be protected?
So the unicellular or a few microns or millimetric type of bacteria, algae, and the small vertebrates tiny, tiny shrimp that are called phytoplankton. So this is the base of the food chain for all the rest of the animals, small size, medium size, large size. So if the phytoplankton is not there, then the food chain is going to go down the drains.
Now, looking at this bright, brilliant green in this waterway, we think, oh, wow, this is really healthy, this is really great. Actually, it's just the opposite of that, correct?
Correct. This is an overgrowth of green algae or red tide algae sometimes that is depleting the ocean of oxygen. And this algae is being overgrown due to an amount of fertilizers that are dumped in the water. So they're feeding the algae is consuming the oxygen. The depletion of oxygen ends up killing the life that was there in those parts.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at red tide, actually, what is red tide?
So red tide is a type of algae, and it produces toxic substance that can impair the metabolic processes of many organisms in the water, especially fish. And when this algae overgrows, it's always a small amount of that algae, but when it overgrows, then it becomes a problem because the toxins are higher and the oxygen consumption is also higher, and depleting the oxygen with higher toxins makes it impossible for other forms of life to survive. So we have last year in Florida, a huge amount of fish dead all over the state of Florida due to the red tide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm looking at that too, is people don't realize it when they're putting chemical fertilizers on their lawn, goes onto the golf courses, onto the farms, wherever it is, and then also insecticides, pesticides. All this is really ending up in the water because the application is too high and not properly made, and at the same time it's running out through the storm water. So how can people actually stop red tide right in their own yard, at their own golf course, at their own farm?
So I think the organic growth, using type of organic nutrients, organic fertilizers, decreasing the amount of chemical fertilizers that are going to run off to the ocean and create this problem is the way to go. And also we have to be mindful of the amount they use, and if we really need these luscious lawns and greens and the golf courses all the time? Probably not. So I think there has been also an overuse of these chemicals by our society nowadays.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're going to be talking about later is the more of these chemicals you use, actually more sterile and more dead the soil itself becomes, and it kills off a lot of the microbes that are actually key to life as well. Dead coral. What is a dead coral?
So dead coral has been a consequence, again, of this excessive dumping of chemicals there. We, during the process of evolution, different plants, different corals, were never exposed to, and all of a sudden we are dumping tons of chemicals to the ocean that become toxic to the corals. Many of these toxins are impairing and blocking normal ways of the metabolic path in the coral. The depleted oxygen in the coral also is causing anoxia, which is the lack of the process, and then the coral is dying for these reasons.
Yeah. So anyway, here comes the cavalry to save humankind from itself. You're from Cali, Colombia.
Correct.
And then, of course, now you have an operation in Florida as you've introduced this HyOx SuperWater into the United States. But why coming out of Cali, Colombia? What's happened there that has led to this discovery and now the manufacture of this HyOx water?
So it's a little convoluted, but I'm a internal medicine doctor. I trained in New York, a lung specialist. Then I settled in Tampa, Florida, but my roots are in Cali. I have a group of friends who are committed and dedicated to improve the environment there. So they try to develop a technology to improve fuel, to decrease contamination. And along the way, I saw that their technology could be used for enhancing the oxygen in the water. Being that I'm an oxygen specialist to treat humans, I thought that it could be used also to enhance oxygen, to treat vegetation, to treat animals, and to improve the water. When there's no oxygen in the water, that's when the water smells bad due to the anaerobic bacteria that cause this putrid, offensive smell when it's intoxicating the water this way.
Yeah, I wanted to interject this too. When I was up in the Mojave Desert, this is a real desert area. There's virtually little life of any kind there. And we're looking at green mining process. And this gentleman was finding the gold, moving it, but he was doing a green process, so no chemicals are being used. He was only doing a sluice with water. He was recycling 95% of the water because there was one well in 100 miles or so of this area. But when he would put back the soil, which he was doing within 24 hours, it was still 5% of the water in there, but also oxygen was going into the soil. And so you could see the areas where he'd done the mining, and actually the critters, the scorpions, the tortoises, the snakes, and all that were moving into this area, as well as looking for not only the moisture, but also for the oxygen, because this soil, and so the plants started growing on their own, in a matter of months in areas that had nothing. So when you talk about this, I can understand exactly what you're saying, because this really applies to everything. So
Correct.
This water plus oxygen really does equal life. Going into your R&D facility down in Cali, tell us about that and how this evolved.
So the R&D facility has been processed in Colombia due to the cost of doing research here in the U.S. So we have a lab where we do all the electronics, the hydraulics, and the field testing in waterways, sewage treatment plants, lakes.
So this has been extensive research then,
Yeah,
going across many different disciplines.
Correct. We've been in a process for about 4 to 5 years doing this research and testing. We had done testing with sugar cane, cocoa, coffee, fisheries. So it has been, once you know how extensive the water is used in different industrial applications,
Right.
then you realize that you can tackle all those fields and improve the process and decrease the cost.
Well, it's amazing. You have your R&D down in Cali, then you're in this very large processing plant, and still call it manufacturing processing plant in Florida. So looking at entry into the United States, why come to the United States with this?
So like Frank Sinatra said, if you make it here, you can make it everywhere.
Okay.
So this is the industrial capital of the world, the scientific house light for the world. So if we, even though discovered the technology in Colombia, process it there, we have to prove it here. We have brought it here. We're starting the process of application here in the U.S. because I think it would be a way to spread to the rest of the world, which is what we pretend and try to do. And that's why we're here in Emerald Planet, because we want to spread this knowledge throughout the world.
Yeah, it's interesting in your R&D facility, you're really looking for how to use hydrogen as fuel for the vehicles, and we have one of those there. But what you found is that the water actually became more valuable than using hydrogen as a fuel, correct?
Correct. So if we put in order of values, we can live without the vehicles, but we can live without the plants, the animals, and the water. So from that point of view, the sidekick, it became the water, but now is the main focus of all the research and testing.
Tell us, where do you see this HyOx superoxygenated water going over the next 5, 10, and 15 years? We got to be quick.
So over the next 5 or 10 years, we're looking for strategic alliances with other entities, agencies such as Gevonomics here in the U.S. That will help us in the promotion, distribution, and also in the research of these applications for the high oxygenated water.
This is Dr. Linares. Thank you for being with us. And thank you for being with us as you learn about the SuperWater high oxygenated as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.